sometimes there could be an event that happened a long time ago and far away, and yet its impact can be felt all the way to today. Hello everybody, my name is Timothy. I am a descendant of the Singcat here in Penang, Malaysia. And in this video, we are going to talk about the Great China event that created the Baba Nyonyas. Yes, indeed. It is an event so great that it created what we have here in Southeast Asia today. And because we have the Baba Nyonyas created the infrastructure for the next group of people, the Laucat, to come over here and settle. And by the way, I'm going to mention the 4 different groups of people, which are the Peranakan, Baba Nyonyas, Laucat, and Singcat. I have given you the definition of this in my earlier video. You have not seen the video, please watch it over here. I'll put the thumbnail over here and then I'll put the link in the description so that you have a clarity of what I mean when I say Peranakan, Singcat, Laucat, and Baba Nyonya. Yeah, so in this video, we are going to talk about the Great China incident, and because of that incident, we get the Baba Nyonyas. And because there's the Baba Nyonyas, they prepared the infrastructure for the Laucat to come along to settle here. And because of the Laucat then were instrumental in getting coolies and laborers who are the Singcat to come over to this part of the world to stay and to populate this area. So you can say that if not for that Great China incident, I would not be here in Penang today. If I'm born at all, I might be somewhere in Guangdong province. But because I am a Tai-Shanese, I'm a Cantonese. However, this is not the history of the Cantonese. This is the history related to the Hokkiens. In my previous video, I get many comments asking about what about the history of the Hokkiens in Kelantan, for example, or Terengganu, or in Borneo. Actually, everything ties up to this Great China event. Yes, it's this Great China event that create the whole thing, and because of this, it's like a chain of events that leads all the way to what we have today. And without it, there might not be a Chinese diaspora in the Southeast Asia region. Instead, we would probably have only the Peranakans. But the Peranakans happened 500 years ago, and without an infusion of continuous Chinese migrations, the Peranakas would have been absorbed into the local society. That means they have become part of the Malays a long time ago. However, because of this Great China incident, we have then the Baba Nyonya, which intermarried with the Peranakas, and then came the Laucat, which intermarried with them, and then came the Singcat, which intermarried with them. So one after another, those waves of Chinese migrants ensure that there is a Chinese characteristic not only here in West Malaysia and Singapore, but throughout the Southeast Asian area. And having said that, you will see that there are different types of ethnic groups of Chinese all over Southeast Asia. For example, in Bangkok, we have migrants from Teochew. There are Teochew migrants in the Bangkok area, and so that I might be able to cover in a video one day to explain about the history of migration to Siam or Thailand as we know today. And the migrants of the Changzhou Hokkien people to the southern part of the Isthmus of Kra, all the way down to Kedah, where we have Penang today. When they arrived, there was not yet Penang. Penang was not yet settled. So the Changzhou Hokkiens settled on the northern part of the Isthmus of Kra, and the Quanzhou Hokkiens settled on the southern part of the Isthmus of Kra. And so it is, the settlers came to different parts of Southeast Asia, and it all ties back to this one Great China incident, which many of you might not be aware, but its impact we feel today. And so, what is this Great China incident? Well, the Great China incident is the fall of the Ming Dynasty. Yeah, today when I'm telling you about the fall of the Ming Dynasty, it sounds like something very foreign and very irrelevant to our everyday life. But as I said here, without that, we would not be here. And through this and subsequent videos, I want to demonstrate to you how the fall of the Ming Dynasty have its repercussion and a set of a chain of events that led to the Baba Nyonyas and then the Lao Cat and then the Sing Cat, one after another in a continuous chain. Without them, we only have the Peranakan. Okay, and to best explain this, because as you know, if I try to do the explanation myself, I'm going to be very long-winded and boring. And so to give you clarity on the fall of the Ming Dynasty, I'm going to share with you an episode from the China podcast with James and Jessica. So the China podcast is a series of podcasts about the history of China, and it is being hosted by the two podcasters, James Bryce and Jessica McFarlane, and they are going to discuss. They are Oriental enthusiasts. They like to know about all things in the Far East, in Asia, in China, and so on. And so there is a series of discussion between James and Jessica, which helps you understand something which is very historical and very dry. They are going to make it very easy for us to understand and to comprehend. So in this particular episode of the China podcast, James and Jessica is going to discuss the Ming Dynasty, the collapse of the Ming Dynasty in their own conversation over a podcast. And I will be back after we listen to this podcast, and I will give you some interpretation of that. But before I go, I just want to tell you that although James and Jessica are passionate about the Oriental studies, they are not scholars. Firstly, they are not scholars, and secondly, they don't speak Mandarin. And so they might mutilate some of the pronunciation. I can tell you in advance that I hear Jessica pronouncing the Qing dynasty as the King dynasty. So you have to bear with her there, because despite the mutilation of the pronunciation, the information is there. That rich information that is easy for us to understand is there, and I would like you to follow this along so that you have an idea about the fall of the Ming Dynasty. And from there, I will also continue to educate you so that you have a clarity of how we end up having the Baba Nyonyas and subsequently the Lao Cat and the Sing Cat that creates us, the Chinese people of West Malaysia and Singapore today. So let's go on to the China podcast.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. Get ready, because today we're diving deep into the fall of the Ming Dynasty in China.
Oh, the Ming, a dynasty that reigned for almost 3 centuries. It's incredible to think about how long that is, longer than the U.S. has even existed.
Exactly, and that's what makes their downfall so fascinating, right? It's like they were this seemingly unstoppable force in history, incredible art, global exploration, you name it. But then, almost overnight, bam, it all came crashing down.
It really does make you wonder what went wrong. How does a dynasty that powerful, that entrenched, just vanish?
Well, that's what we're here to uncover. And I think what's really interesting is that the seeds of their destruction were sown from within. It wasn't just outside forces, you know?
It's like that saying, the greatest enemy often lies within. In the Ming Dynasty's case, that's scarily accurate.
It really is. You know, when we think about empires falling, we often focus on the external factors, invasions, wars, that kind of thing. But with the Ming Dynasty, it was this internal decay that really set the stage for their collapse. Kind of like a termite infestation, slowly eating away at the foundation of a seemingly strong structure.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And one of the most striking examples of this internal decay is the reign of the Wanli Emperor.
Oh yeah, good old Wanli. He was on the throne for nearly 50 years, the longest reign of any Ming emperor. You'd think that kind of stability would be a good thing for a dynasty.
You'd assume so, wouldn't you?
Right.
And stability, long reign, seems like a recipe for success. But here's the thing, Wanli, well, he became increasingly detached from his duties.
Detached, you mean like checked out?
Basically, he started withdrawing from public life, disengaging from the daily grind of ruling, delegated, procrastinated, you name it. And that created a very dangerous power vacuum.
Ah, I see where you're going with this. And as we all know, nature abhors a vacuum. Someone's going to step in to fill that void, and it's not always going to be with the best intentions.
Exactly. And this is where those termites, that internal decay, really take hold. With Wanli absent, corruption ran rampant through the imperial court. Officials were more concerned with lining their own pockets than with, actually governing.
It's a tale as old as time, sadly. Power corrupts, and absolute power.
Corrupts, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this corruption had a devastating impact on the Ming Dynasty. Mismanagement of funds, resources siphoned away from crucial services, it all weakened the empire from the inside out.
And it's not like they were in a great financial position to begin with. They had all those massive military campaigns, right? Those must have been a huge drain on their resources.
Absolutely. They were constantly battling various threats, from the Mongols up north to pirates along their coast. All that military spending had to come from somewhere, and guess who got stuck with the bill?
The poor peasants, as always.
Sadly, yes. They imposed heavy taxes on the peasantry, which, when you think about it, is like the foundation of your empire. So you have this system where the people are struggling under the weight of taxes, while those in power are more interested in self-enrichment than good governance.
A recipe for disaster, if I've ever heard one.
You got it. And as if things weren't bad enough already, imagine you're a peasant farmer, already struggling to pay these exorbitant taxes, you're barely scraping by, and then bam, a natural disaster hits.
Mother Nature does not mess around.
Nope, not one bit.
Mm-hmm.
And during this period, the Ming Dynasty was hit by a series of devastating droughts and floods. Crops failed, famine spread, and people were suffering.
It's like a domino effect. One problem just amplifies the next. You have this population that's pushed to the brink, and they're looking for someone or something to blame, and who's an easier target than the detached emperor and the corrupt officials.
It's a classic case of an empire out of touch with its people. And when you combine that disconnect with economic hardship and natural disasters, well, it's only a matter of time before someone capitalizes on that discontent and lights a spark of rebellion.
And enter Li Zicheng. But more on him later. So we left off with the Ming Dynasty, already teetering on the edge, facing economic turmoil, natural disasters, and now this charismatic rebel leader, Li Zicheng, gaining more and more support. Talk about a recipe for disaster.
He was a powder keg waiting to explode. And explode it did. By 1644, Li Zicheng's forces were at the gates of Beijing, the heart of the Ming Dynasty.
Beijing, the Forbidden City, the seat of imperial power for centuries. Can you imagine the scene? I mean, what was the atmosphere like inside those walls as the rebels closed in?
Sheer panic. Imagine it, the defenses of this once mighty city, neglected and weakened by years of corruption, now facing this tidal wave of rebellion. And inside the Forbidden City, the imperial court, once a symbol of order and power, was completely paralyzed by fear.
I can only imagine. It's almost like a Greek tragedy, The once mighty brought low by their own hubris.
And at the center of it all, you have Emperor Chengzhen, the last Ming emperor. He's facing the weight of his dynasty's legacy, the hopes of his people, all while his empire crumbles around him.
We talked about his suicide earlier, but I think it's worth really pausing here to think about that moment. This man, facing the utter collapse of everything he'd ever known, chooses to end his own life. It's a chilling reminder of just how desperate the situation had become.
Absolutely. But here's the thing about history. It's rarely neat and tidy. Just when you think you've reached the climax of the story, there's always another twist. And the fall of the Ming Dynasty is no exception.
Oh, I love a good plot twist. So it wasn't Li Zicheng who delivered the final blow.
Nope. Just when it seemed like Li Zicheng and his rebels were poised to sweep in and establish a new dynasty, another power emerged from the shadows, the Manchus.
Ah, yes, the Manchus. They were relative newcomers to this whole power struggle, weren't they? Tell us a bit about them.
Well, they were originally a semi-nomadic people from the northeast, a region we now know as Manchuria, but they were a force to be reckoned with. Unified and ambitious. They'd actually been watching the Ming Dynasty's slow decline for years, biding their time, waiting for the right moment to make their move.
So they saw this chaos, this internal strife, as their opportunity.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how they played their hand. They didn't just march in all guns blazing. No, they were much more strategic than that. They used the Ming Dynasty's weakness against them.
Clever. So how did they do it?
It all came down to a fateful decision. Some might even say a colossal miscalculation. by some of the Ming generals who were tasked with defending the empire.
Oh boy, I'm sensing this isn't going to end well for the Ming dynasty. What did they do?
Well, they were desperate to quell Li Zicheng's rebellion. Right. But instead of presenting a united front, they made a decision that would ultimately seal their fate. They turned to the Manchus for help.
You've got to be kidding me. They invited the Manchus, the very people who were eyeing up their empire, to come and help them.
Yep. They essentially invited the wolf in to guard the hen house. They thought they could control the Manchus, use them to defeat Li Zicheng, and then send them packing back to Manchuria. But the Manchus, led by Prince Dorgan, they saw this invitation for exactly what it was, an opportunity.
Wow, talk about a strategic blunder. So while everyone else was focused on the immediate threat of Li Zicheng, the Manchus were playing the long game.
Exactly. They swooped in, routed Li Zicheng's forces, and then, in a move that shocked the Ming court, they just kept on going. On June 6, 1644, they marched into Beijing, a city they were supposedly there to protect, and declared the establishment of the Qing dynasty. Just like that, the Ming dynasty, an empire that had stood for centuries, was gone, replaced by the king with their first emperor, Shunzi. It was a swift and brutal end to a dynasty that had once seemed invincible.
It's hard to believe that an empire as vast and powerful as the Ming could fall so quickly. It makes you wonder, was this truly the end or just the beginning of a new chapter in China's story? It's easy to think, okay, Beijing's fallen, the Ming dynasty's done, but history's never that clean cut, is it? It's like, how do you just erase centuries of rule, of culture overnight?
You're absolutely right. Capturing Beijing was a huge victory for the Manchus, no doubt.
Right.
But it wasn't like flipping a switch. The Ming dynasty, especially in the south, that's where their roots ran deep. It had been their power base for generations.
Right. You can't just march in and expect people to pledge allegiance to, well, frankly, a foreign power just like that. There had to be pushback, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's where we see the emergence of what's known as the Southern Ming. It's almost this last gasp of the Ming dynasty, clinging to hope, refusing to go down without a fight.
The Southern Ming, it sounds almost romantic, you know? This last stand against impossible odds.
There's definitely an element of that. Imagine it, the Ming heartland's fallen. But in the south, these loyalists are clinging to the belief that they can somehow turn the tide, restore the Ming to its former glory. They even went so far as to declare multiple claimants to the Ming throne in different southern cities.
Oh, wow. Talk about a recipe for complications. So it's not even like a unified resistance at this point.
Not quite. You've got these different factions, all vying for power, each believing they have the rightful claim to the throne. It becomes this tangled web of loyalties and rivalries.
And I'm guessing that division, that lack of a united front, didn't exactly work in their favor when it came to dealing with the Manchus.
Not at all. The king, under Prince Dorgan, sharp as attack, that one, they saw this infighting and basically thought, well, why make things difficult for ourselves? A divided enemy is a weaker enemy, after all.
Divide and conquer, the oldest trick in the book. But even in the face of these overwhelming odds, there are always those individuals who refuse to give up hope. And in the case of the Southern Ming, one name stands out. Koxinga. Now, he wasn't content with just holding on to a sliver of the mainland. This guy had bigger plans.
Koxinga, oh, he was something else. A brilliant military mind, utterly devoted to the Ming cause. He knew that to have any chance, they needed a power base, something beyond the reach of the Manchu armies. And that's where Taiwan enters the picture.
Taiwan? As in the island of Taiwan? That was under Dutch control at the time, wasn't it?
It was. The Dutch East India Company had established a pretty firm foothold there. Not exactly an obvious choice for a Ming dynasty comeback, you might think.
To say the least. So how did Koxinga pull that off?
Well, he was nothing if not bold. He leads this daring naval expedition across the strait, defeats the Dutch, and claims Taiwan as a refuge for Ming loyalists. It was an incredible feat, really, and a testament to Koxinga's sheer determination.
So for a while, at least, it seemed like Taiwan might become this symbol of Ming resistance, a thorn in the side of the new Qing dynasty. But the Manchus, they were persistent, to say the least.
Oh, they were nothing if not thorough. They were dead set on uniting all of China under their rule, and they weren't about to let this island off the coast stand in their way. But they were also patient. Koxinga had made Taiwan a fortress. A direct assault would be costly.
So they played the waiting game, wore down the resistance, waited for the right moment.
Exactly. And that moment came in 1683 under the Kangxi Emperor. By this point, Koxinga has passed away. The resistance in Taiwan, while still strong, wasn't what it once was. The king launched a major offensive, and Taiwan falls, marking the final chapter of the Southern Ming. The king had achieved their goal, China was unified under their rule.
What a story. I mean, it's tragic, of course, the fall of a dynasty, the struggles of the Southern Ming. But there's also something incredibly inspiring about it, that unwavering loyalty, that refusal to give up hope, even in the face of insurmountable odds. It makes you think about what it truly means to believe in something, to fight for a cause, even when all seems lost.
I think that's the enduring power of history, isn't it?
Huh.
It's filled with these grand narratives of empires rising and falling, but at its heart, it's really about the choices people made, the sacrifices they endured, the ideas they clung to, even in the face of adversity. And those stories, those echoes of the past, they continue to resonate with us today, reminding us that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit, that spark of resilience, it can never truly be extinguished.
It's like those echoes, those whispers of the past can still teach us something about ourselves, about the world we live in today. So thank you, everyone, for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the fall of the Ming Dynasty. We hope you learned something new, gained a new perspective on this pivotal moment in history. And who knows, maybe it even sparks some reflection on the empires, the powers that be in our own lives. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep learning from the echoes of the past.
The Chongzhen Emperor, last emperor of the Ming Dynasty, was just 33 years old when he committed suicide. And his suicide, the death of one person, would set forth a rampage of slaughter of the Chinese people by the Manchus. But in this podcast, you might not have seen the connection yet between what is happening in Beijing and then gradually throughout the rest of China with what is going to happen in Southeast Asia that led to the creation of the Baba Nyonyas. So I have to ask you to bear with me because we are going to further discover that in the next video. Yeah, because there's so much information I need to share with you, I have to do it in more than one video. So, but what I want to tell you right now is, having heard that podcast, I need to let you know that if you have not already realized it, it is a synthetic podcast. That is to say, it is computer generated. The podcasters are computer generated, and they are generated for the purpose of explaining the fall of the Ming Dynasty to you and to give you an idea that the transition from one Chinese dynasty to the other, be it from Song to Yuan, Yuan to Ming, and Ming to Qing, is never a walk in the park. It's never smooth, and it will make the US presidential election look like a joyride. So this transition from the Ming to the Qing dynasty is accompanied by a lot of bloodshed, a lot of death, and it all happened because they opened the gates of the Great Wall to let the Manchus in. In our next video, I'm going to share with you, we are going to get closer to why all this event resulted in a total makeover in the characteristic of Southeast Asia that created this Chinese diaspora. As I've mentioned earlier, without this particular great incident, there would not have been the Baba Nyonyas, and without the Baba Nyonyas, the Lao Cat would have a hard time gaining a foothold. If the Lao Cat has come as merchants, they are going to repeat history and create another new set of Peranakans. But because there is this Baba Nyonyas, they can settle here and maintain themselves as Chinese, and from then on allow the Singcat to come between the mid-19th to mid-20th century. But I'm going to cover that in the next video. So let's meet up again in the next video. If you enjoyed what you watched so far, please give a like to this video so that it can be shared to more people, and more people will be able to understand China history, and I promise you to relate it back to the history of the Chinese in West Malaysia and Singapore. And also, please subscribe to the Learn Penang Hokkien YouTube channel for more information, more videos on the history of the Chinese in West Malaysia and Singapore. Thank you so much. Kam Sia Lu Che Che.